Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share an update on what is going on with my Z Fold 4 that I sent for in-warranty repair, of course, to Samsung. Now, for those of you that follow the channel, you already know what happened. For those of you that don't, I will detail that through the course of this video. But for anyone who just wants to know what has actually occurred, what Samsung's response to my defective phone is, well, you'll get that right now. Basically, they attempted to repair the device, but after trying to pull 4 different parts for the repair, they informed me, really I reached out, but they informed me that they would not be able to get the parts and they would have to refund my money. So that's great news, of course, especially when you take into account what happened to me last year with my Fold 3. So a big improvement from invalidating my warranty and making me go mildly insane. And thankfully I had Care Plus last year, which ended up resolving the issue. But this year I do not for the Fold 4 because I thought it was basically impossible that they could try or that rather I would go through the same issue 2 years in a row, even if it's not the exact same technical problem. But I mean just being without a phone in warranty at no doing of my own, because I did not drop the phone, damage it, get it wet, anything to that effect. So basically, in my opinion, a complete 180 to now be refunding my money, that's exactly what you want from a manufacturer that is going to stand behind their product and make sure that existing customers want to stay with the brand in spite or despite a manufacturer's defect. So kudos to Samsung for that. And for those of you not interested in the entire story, well, this is the time, I guess, to stop watching. Basically, what transpired, for those of you that want to know exactly what happened here, now that you got the very, very short version, if only that was what I had gone through, I wish, right, in a perfect world. I'll start off by reminding everyone, the previous generation, the Fold 3, my Wi-Fi chipset died in warranty. I mailed it in, even though I had Care Plus, because I truly believed Samsung should stand behind it and replace the device in warranty, because Care Plus, of course, wanted to send me a refurb unit. Ultimately, they told me that my warranty was voided because of water damage, which of course was false. And I told them that the phone had never been dropped, never gotten wet, and the rep back then actually had the gall to tell me that maybe it was my sweat. Now, I don't know where she was coming from. I don't know how she would presume that I produce sweat like a waterfall, let alone that how would I get it onto the device to ruin it. But she went there, which I don't know why she did. She could have just said, "I'm sorry, sir," and that was the end of the story. After all, I mean, she was just a representative, and she was based in the U.S., for anyone that was wondering. Not that that's relevant, but for anyone who thinks you get better support in the States, that should give you a good reference point of one of the worst experiences I went through. Ultimately, Care Plus replaced the device with a brand new phone. I had to fight for that because, after all, it was not of my own doing. Had I broken the device, then I would not only not argue about getting a refurb, because that's what you deserve at that point, but furthermore, it was something where I expected a new device, because not only had I not broken it, but my phone was in perfect condition. So when this happened with the Fold 4, even though this is my wife's, I'll pick that up for all intents and purposes, and it wasn't the Wi-Fi chipset, it was a different problem. Basically, the issue was that while I was sitting at my desk one day, it just populated saying that there was no SIM card inserted. Please insert the SIM. Now, of course, my SIM card was inserted, and what I did notice was that when the phone was closed, it would actually see the SIM card. So that meant the issue was positional and likely had something to do with the ribbon cable that connected the SIM card slot, I assume, through the hinge to the rest of the board or whatever it may be. Either way, I then tried based on the one user who had the same problem on the internet. He or she had switched to the eSIM. So I said, you know what, I'll give it a shot just so I don't have to use a backup device because I already was. And basically, Verizon tortured me. For anyone that's wondering, Verizon reps, as good as the service is, and yes, it's gone downhill over the years, I will say that, but it's still the best overall, and especially where I live, it still is, and that was the case when I lived in New York as well. So I'm going to stick to my story, and even good friends of mine who were with other carriers for their entire lives finally came over to Verizon. But all of that aside, they need some instruction internally, some training on how to activate eSIMs for Z Fold devices. Apparently, this problem exists with the Flip too. So if you're trying to get your eSIM activated with your brand new Fold or Flip, do yourself a favor and tell them they must send you the QR code, because otherwise they just don't know how to do it. And I had to actually instruct them step by step, and it took 2 days, many hours of calls before it was done. But unfortunately, while that did work temporarily, and all of a sudden I had a working Fold 4 again, within about 2 or 3 days, the entire internal display went black. Totally unresponsive, couldn't wake it up. Sometimes it would flash on for a second, but it was done. And I should have known that would happen, because the other user that I found, the only single post about this happening, had said that they switched to the eSIM and the entire device stopped working later that week. So, yeah, ended up in that hole, sent it in for in-warranty repair, and didn't have a response for quite a while. Then finally, I was checking every day. I saw that they were repairing it, which meant they were not voiding my warranty. So I was elated, because after all, look what happened last year. And again, I did not have Care Plus this year, because how likely, what was the probability that I would have, again, an issue where I did not damage the phone myself and it was just defective? It's just, the probability was not in favor of that occurring. So it was a fairly safe, calculated risk not to, again, take Care Plus. Of course, this year with the Fold 5, you better believe I have the Care Plus. After all, it was discounted, as all of you know, who went through my pre-order links, my affiliate links. We got a discounted rate. It was like $7 and change a month. Well worth it, especially if you're watching this video and you know that I've now back-to-back had 2 years of problems. Granted, towards the end of the year with the device, but still, that shouldn't be happening. If I had broken it, different story. Again, if I had dropped the phone and broken it and Care Plus was going to give me a refurb, that's perfectly fine, because the phone was not mint. It was broken and at my own doing. That wasn't the case. So basically what transpired was I called them. They said they were sourcing for parts. It was pulling teeth, as it always is. And I had to go through many transfers, too much time of my own wasted. Even Samsung's time is being wasted. Just the call centers are terrible. I mean, it sounds like there's a party going on. For a company that makes noise-canceling products out the wazoo, do yourself a favor, Samsung, get some noise-canceling headsets for your own customer service reps, because we should not hear the person to their left and right more clearly than the agent we're speaking to. But all of that isn't too relevant. After the torture, again, they reiterated there were 4 parts. I tried to find out what these parts exactly were, and they did detail that one of them was the internal display. So that sounded good, right? They're going to repair it. I'm happy. After all, that Fold 4 was a matching device to my wife's phone, exact same color, just 1 terabyte versus her 512, that I got for each of us ahead of our wedding last year. So there was sentimental value to the device as well. And then about 2 days later, I got a notification from Samsung that they were shipping the device back unrepaired. And I said, what the hell is happening? So, of course, I had to get back on the phone with them, to which they ended up telling me that the device is not being repaired because they cannot source any of the parts, which I thought was very curious, because the Fold 5 hadn't even started shipping yet. It had been announced, and you could pre-order it, but, we were well within the warranty period still for the Fold 4. And usually manufacturers make a bulk of parts so that post that 1 year, they still have parts to support it out for, a given number of years. That's generally rule of thumb for all products that carry manufacturer warranties. They've got to cover their tush. So at that point, I said, how about you just send me a new Fold 4? And they put me on hold, came back, we have none in stock. I don't know how that is possible. I highly doubt it, but maybe in the 1 terabyte capacity, they no longer had it, because after all, they make a lot less of the highest capacity variant than they do, of course, of the lower, the less expensive, less storage variants. So, okay, so then what's the next option? Well, full refund, as you already know. It took them like an hour with me on the phone to continuously calculate this, and it was ridiculous because they wanted proof of purchase. I told them I bought the Fold 4 from Samsung. So if I give you the order number, shouldn't you be able to get all that? No, they can't. So again, not a very good system. And this is just because Samsung isn't great, in my opinion, at direct sales. And I think anyone who's bought from them already knows that. So even though the trade-in values are amazing and the best deals will come direct from Samsung, the experience is not the best. And this, I feel like, is par for the course with every electronics manufacturer. This is why it's easier to go to retailers rather than direct, because even though the pricing will always be the best, usually going direct, this applies to laptops. If you go direct with Lenovo, HP, whoever it may be, I won't say Asus because nothing's ever in stock, you'll always get a better deal, but it will be usually at the expense of your time, the headaches you'll go through, etc. And that's not always the case, but usually the case. Whereas, of course, if you buy something from Best Buy, which I generally highly recommend, even though they're not my favorite retailer, the return process, exchange process is seamless compared to all of these other routes. And that applies to this as well. So they told me they would do a refund. They ended up calculating it, which ended up being the full purchase price. So I don't know why they took an hour to calculate it. Of course, after I furnished them with the invoice, which again was absurd. And I thought that was a really good outcome. The downside to that was that even though I told them I needed a device and that I am borderline, I'm seriously injured, about to have major surgery, and I've been like this for now a full year. It's hard to believe, but I have lived that way. And they were sympathetic, but of course they don't really care. But I still thought that, they've got to do something here, but they didn't. And, they're not required through the warranty to do anything. But I do think this is something where they have to step up their game. If they don't have the ability to get me another device or do anything to repair it, well, then the refund certainly should not take a full 10 days. And we are at a full 10 days right now. So at the time of this video. So that's bad. And their promise has come and gone in terms of timing. So hopefully it happens tomorrow. If not, I will have to call them again and go through a little bit more torture, but it'll be worth it, I'm telling myself, because I'm getting a full refund. It's not a prorated refund. Hopefully they don't change their mind on that. That would be some shit, right? But that is a perfect scenario. I mean, I went through a defective Samsung fridge years ago, the ones with the display on them, the touchscreen, which was great initially, but of course the ice makers are from hell as well, and they don't work. And by the way, a side note on this, do yourself a favor if you're in the U.S., I can't speak to being outside of the States, but if you're in the U.S., do not buy a fridge, dryer, washer, dishwasher, any sort of home appliance from Samsung or LG, because they are simply not repairable and the support side is awful, which is why they ended up refunding my money on the fridge. But if you think they gave me a full refund, they did not. They prorated it based on the number of years that I had it, even though it had problems from, inside the first year. Still better than nothing, of course. So now here, again, I would have liked them to step up to the plate and say, well, Mr. Weiss, we understand you need a device. But that just didn't happen, of course. And for those of you that think because I'm a YouTuber, I have some sort of influence, see what I did there, and I can get things expedited, that's not the way this world works. I mean, maybe for some celebrities it does, but, I'm not a celebrity. So, and nor am I trying to leverage that. I mean, there's no question in certain instances where I've hit brick walls with support, I've contacted my PR contacts and said, hey, I know it's not your realm, but I'm being tortured. Hopefully you can just at least connect me to someone at a higher level who works in customer relations to try to get something done. And sometimes that pans out. Sometimes it doesn't. In fact, most of the time it doesn't, because they don't, these are people that are working in PR. And I totally understand and respect that. But at any rate, what ended up occurring here, since they still have not furnished me with anything, which is, I think, the worst part of this story, is that, of course, as you all know, I pre-ordered the Fold 5, got it in hand, and I did say to them, how about you just send me a Fold 5? But they told me it wasn't available to ship, even though my order had been shipped already. So it was even more crap. But it probably hadn't been allotted to the actual return and exchange, or the department that handles defective units. Let me put it that way. They didn't have inventory for that. They probably only had it for pre-sales. I'm just filling in blanks for them because they didn't do a very good job of explaining that. But ultimately, I got off the call and said, all right, if this is the result, that's as good as it's going to get. Again, as I said at the top of the video, it's a complete 180 from what I went through last year with the Fold 3. And basically being told, to take a hike. And had I not had Care Plus, well, I would have been on that hike. So definitely, I think a good outcome. And I do believe they will obviously end up delivering that refund. But again, to not have a device for so long, I mean, thankfully, I did have a backup phone, the Note 20, and then I was able to purchase a Fold 3, because I found very quickly, as many of you know, that the Note 20 was just a terrible. I mean, it's a good phone. Don't get me wrong. As a backup, it's an excellent phone, but it was terrible for me. I'm spoiled. I've been using folding devices like, well, the Z Fold now for every generation. So to go back to a candy bar was like, I couldn't do it. It was better than nothing, but it was really bad for me. I missed having a full blown tablet in my pocket. Can you blame me? And ultimately that's what this delivered. And now I'm trading it in. This is about to be shipped out against the value of the Fold 5, $800 US, amazing value for it. And I did pay less for it, of course, and I am going to return my Note 20. For anyone that caught my premium refurb coverage of that Note 20, the beauty of that with Amazon is that you have a full year to return it for your entire purchase price, as long as you don't damage it. And so I will be. So that effectively reduces the price I paid for this even more, if you see what I'm saying, by an additional $300. So this was a great deal for me. And then if I get the refund, cherry on top, which I should, there's no reason I wouldn't. But that's the, entire saga as it stands right now at the time of this video. And for those of you, I saw a few comments about like Apple would never do this. Look, every manufacturer does stuff like this. And Apple actually has a pretty bad track record on making things right when it comes to pushing out defective devices, whether we talk about Foldgate or we talk about what's presently going on, if you haven't seen, with the iPhone 14 battery degrading inside of its 1-year warranty, which is pretty much unheard of. Some are speculating it has to do with the lack of smart charging. Whatever it is, you can be sure that Apple will try to deny it. And all manufacturers will try to do this until it comes to either a class action suit or they just do the right thing, like Samsung with the explosive Note 7. That was a very big recall. It hurt Samsung terribly, but they did the right thing eventually. They tried and tried, but they had bad cells. And boy, do I know, because I had an explosive phone, as many of you know that, if you were around back then, or you can just check my old videos. But Apple, not a good example. In fact, much worse than any manufacturer I can think of. Dare I go back to when Steve Jobs got so many people to think that putting a case on a phone was acceptable in order to get reception back, since actually holding the device, blocking the antennas, made that generation of iPhone, I think it was back in like 2011, correct me if I'm wrong, I have no problem with that the phones were literally unusable if a human hand was touching them because it would block the antenna. That's just how poorly it was made, clearly never tested. And that's just wild, but it happened. And it wasn't that long ago. I mean, it's been a minute. I mean, like I said, Jobs was still alive. But if he let that happen and then was able to convince customers that it was okay because we're going to give you a free piece of plastic that will make it usable again, my God, that's all that I can say. And Apple isn't very far from that standard still to this day. Again, I'm not saying they don't make good devices, but I am saying no manufacturer is free of screwing up, and they will all lie by omission. Some will directly lie, but most of them try to stick to lying by omission. It's worse, though, if they are direct liars, and I do think Apple has been exposed for that. I mean, even their updates that were basically bricking phones in order to force customers to upgrade. For every person on my channel that has commented saying that Apple, continues to improve their devices over the course of their existence, these people obviously didn't get that memo or didn't experience that when Apple was intentionally defiling their phones with upgrades, slowing them down so that users would have to upgrade in order to not have a turd. Now, they're not the only ones that did that. So again, it's just I'm mentioning this because some people believe Apple has a squeaky clean record, and in fact, they have one of the most notorious records in the industry from of course, not only a major manufacturer, but one that many people believe is, perfect, even though no manufacturer is, no person is, nothing on this planet is perfect, except for maybe water when it's clean. And I'm joking and also not. At any rate, that is the end of this video. I wanted to make it quick, and I did by giving everyone that little quick intro, but the process hasn't been fun. I shouldn't go through this. None of you should go through this, but it happens. And hopefully at the end of the torture, the manufacturer makes it right. And I think that in this instance, as long as I do get that refund, Samsung has reassured me that if something were to happen with my Fold 5, granted, I do have Care Plus this time round, I know they're going to step up to the plate and do the right thing. And that rounds out today's video. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe and please stay safe. Later.